Good morning. My apologies for being a little bit late getting started this morning. I had an update that wanted to run on my computer just before it happened. And of course, these days, updates don't give you much of an option. So I had to run that one. So thank you for your patience and we'll get underway. I'll just make sure my microphone's set up correctly. It is, and you can hear me loud and clear, which you can. Just let you know that the Q&A window will be open. So if you've got questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask them there or in the Zoom webinar chat as well. My name's Dante. We're going to be using Facebook's free tools to find out what you need to know about your competition or your market before you start actually trying to sell something. It's a really unique set of tools and really useful set of tools that'll help you get going to do a little bit of market research without having to go out and do lots of surveys and such. So first of all, this is brought to you by the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program, administered by Business Station in Western Australia, Treaty Business Consulting in the NT, and in the Eastern Seaboard in Queensland by Regional Development Australia, Brisbane. Quote here is that when you know more about someone, you can far more easily build rapport with them. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about why you would use these data and these insights to be able to find out more about people before you start selling, is that when you know more, you know how to build that rapport, whether that's shaking hands in person or whether you're going to actually meet someone at a networking event, or what's most likely is you want to connect with them through social media and through advertising on Facebook, Instagram, and whatnot. My name's Dante. I'm part of Facebook's community trainer network across Australia and New Zealand. There's a grand total of 9 of us now, 2 in New Zealand, the rest of us in Australia. In Western Australia, your rep is Sharon McBride, who lives down the southwest corner around about the Margaret River region. I'm in the Northern Territory in Darwin, and in Queensland, you've got Lisa Watigo, who works a lot in North Queensland, but is based in Brisbane. You've got Yvette Adams on the Sunshine Coast and Melissa Westacott, who is based in Moranbah, out the back of Mackay in central Queensland. So quite a diverse representation of people from different parts of Australia as well. We'll get it underway. So how can you know what people want, what they need, and what they love without actually literally walking up to them and asking them, what do you want? What do you need? What do you love? Quite often we make a lot of assumptions when we go into small business. We go, you know, because this is something I'm interested in, then surely there's a market for it. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. We may be thinking that there's definitely a market for our widget, for our cosmetic, for our jewelry, for something because we really enjoy it, we really love it, and we've sort of followed those dreams of saying, you know, do something you love and then you'll never work a day in your life. And that's not necessarily true when there's nobody to actually buy what it is you're selling or to take up the offers that you're putting out there to the market. So we use a lot of different insights from the Facebook family of apps, or from specifically Facebook itself, through what we call our page insights. And through page insights, you can see what really reacts well to people on your particular business page. The same thing goes for Instagram, but you also find there's insights you can find from things like company pages on LinkedIn. You can find out what people are doing on your website through Google Analytics. All these sources of data may seem quite, you know, disconnected and not really connected to each other really at all, but they all give you a little piece of the puzzle. So if you learn that over here that people are clicking on the page of your website that's to do with your about information, that's important to know that people are actually looking to find out who it is you are and what your background story is. If they are mainly women between 25 and 35 who are on Facebook, and they're, let's just say they are very interested in posts that you make that are videos that are first person of you showing an experience rather than showing your face, then you can say, okay, within that demographic, we have quite a strong affinity for people seeing what is going on in the first person. And first person videos are extremely powerful right now. They're a really big, a big trend on social media videos. I think everyone's seen the talking head on social media, holding their phone out, doing their Facebook lives and talking to people like that. But we're not seeing so much is someone getting into your shoes and going for a walk on that beach, getting into your shoes and showing the process of how to knit, how to crochet, how to make, how to write, how to design. A lot of it's that whole thing of going, here's me talking about it rather than here's me showing you how this thing works from your own perspective, which is a much easier way for people to learn something, particularly if you're in a coaching or in an educational area. So your page insights on Facebook and similarly your profile insights on your Instagram business account are going to be a great place to start to find out what it is that people like and don't like. What are the posts you're doing that people seem to really have an affinity with? Oh gosh, that coffee tastes so sweet this morning. Perfect. And what are the things that you're doing that are appealing to specific demographics of people? Are you appealing more to men, more to women, more to people in New Zealand, more to people in Queensland, more to people in South Australia? Are they older men, younger women? Are they people who have an affinity for video, for static things like quotes of the day? Or are they people who are just there to get a special from you because that's what you're known to be able to do a lot of? If you have a Facebook group of over 1,000 members, you'll also get what we call group insights. So if you've got a group and you've got all these people interacting on it and doing these amazing things and chatting and interacting and talking and commenting and sharing stuff, and you've got a very alive group, you've got over 1,000 people in there, you can learn some great information about the kind of things that people are reacting to in your group. So you say, are they people who love to vote and interact with posts? Are they people who like to read things? Or are they people who just simply just want to get in there and say, you know, I just want to read and not participate, but be a passive observer? You can learn so much from your group just as long as you got over 1,000 people in it. That's when it starts to kick in the option to have those insights. You've also got your audience insights, and these are pretty much for anyone to be able to get. As long as you've got a Facebook account and you've got access to an ads account, so you've done some boosting before or something like that, then you'll have what we call audience insights. And that's what some of this particular session is going to focus on. Insights for business are found through this particular location on Facebook. It's a page that contains a whole lot of reports that have been run on different industries in different countries, to give you some of the ideas of what the trends are, what are some of the things that people do like, what are some of the things that people really react to, and what are some of what's really important for you as a small business, what are some of the purchase intentions of people, particularly over this next 12 months. Now, some of these reports, of course, are very affected by the changes in the economy that we're seeing right now. Some of them are affected by changes due to COVID-19, for instance, as we're coming out of that period of time. Although in Europe, I think they're going through a third wave or something right now, which is a bit of a worry. But you'll see that some of those things will change quite dramatically. But what doesn't change is the state of human nature. And that's what tools like Facebook and Google and LinkedIn and TikTok manage to track and collate data on very, very broadly and very, very well. And you've got access to this. Most of the platforms don't really give you that much of an insight into the broader data on their network, but Facebook's quite open about the stuff that they will provide you through a thing called your audience insights. So that's found through facebook.com/business. When you get there, you're able to go down to the insights menu, down to what they call insights tools. And about the second thing on that sub menu then is called audience insights. And I've pointed to it there on the arrow there. And what that does, it opens up to you an interface that looks a little bit like, well, it's aggregated info basically about either people who follow your pages that you've got now, or you can look at the broader population of Facebook of people over the age of 18 on the platform and see generalized information about them without identifying them specifically. It'll give you information about where they're located, what the things are they love in that population center. What are, I guess, other pages and other things that they tend to really have an affinity with. And also look at subsections of gender, of interests, and of all sorts of things, from the magazines they read to the kind of car brands they may have an affinity with. So we might have a look at that in terms of the stuff you can find out through your audience insights. You can look at, well, we said age, gender. You can see the different educational levels. You can see that in certain markets, there's a higher degree of university education than what there is in others. You can look at job titles that people have, and they seem to have reported on their profiles that that's what they do. And also through the AI that Facebook has, can sort of take some pretty accurate guesses about the kind of job titles people have. You can look at relationship statuses, particularly important if you're trying to appeal to people who are getting married soon, or people who are thinking and getting engaged soon, or people who are in a it's complicated relationship, are particularly interesting ones to market to, because you know if it's complicated, it's probably going downhill at some point. You can also do the locations, the geographical locations, so the towns, the cities, those kind of things where people are located, and how that relates to either, as we started off with your own Facebook page, or with the general population of Facebook in a country or in a city of your choosing that you want to have a bit of marketing look at. When we look at their affiliations, we're talking about, I've done a lot of webinars this week, so I'm going to be drinking a lot of my coffee right now. And we've got a lot of interests, the hobbies, the things they love to do outside of their jobs. We look at the brands that they have a particular interest in. If they're a Ford person, we can tell that. If they are a Chanel person, we can tell that. If there's someone who really enjoys Kmart, we can even see that. We look at what the celebrities are that they have some kind of like for. If they're a Kim Kardashian person or they're a Brad Pitt person, we can tell who they really, really seem to have that attraction to when it comes to movie stars, singers, writers, authors, painters, anyone who is a public figure out there in the world. We can also see what cuisines they like. Are they an Indian food person, a Thai food person, or Italian food person? We can see that kind of information. Now, again, it's not telling us that information about those specific people, like the individuals themselves. What it will do is give you aggregated information in a particular market. Let's just say Mackay in central North Queensland, to see how many people in that market have an interest in Indian food. And that could be a really good way of you saying, okay, well, I'm thinking of opening an Indian restaurant, but first of all, I've got to see who out there already has an Indian restaurant and what kind of information I'm getting back from Facebook to indicate that people have displayed some kind of affinity with Indian food or Indian cuisine in that particular market. And then you've got the lifestyles that people lead. So you can tell through some very clever sleuthing if there's a large LGBTIQA, gay community, lesbian community, trans community in certain places as well, if that's something you're trying to market towards or become more involved in. Likewise, you can see people who are of particular religious affiliations. You can look for particular church denominations. If there's a bunch of people who seem to be connected to, say, a Hillsong church or to the local Catholic church, you won't be able to tell, again, who those individual people are, but you can see an aggregated amount of people who have that affiliation as something that's very clear from the things they do on Facebook. You can also combine a bunch of info to know more about how people live and how your business might fit with that. So that's what we call lifestyle. So the lifestyles could be taking a little bit of where they are, what they like doing, their age, their gender, even their travel status, if they're currently traveling or just recently returned from traveling. We can see what kind of information brings about a particular lifestyle mix that you might be looking for in the business you're doing. Let's just say you're about to start up a shop that sells a lot of things like scented candles, scented soaps, soft furnishings and homewares, decorational items, ornamental stuff, things like my little fake plant that I have sitting on my desk over here that I use as a prop sometimes for my videos, that kind of stuff. Let's just say you're wanting to open up that in a town such as Geraldton in Western Australia. So what you would want to do is go in and see, okay, how many people in the Geraldton region are on Facebook first? And we go, well, we assume that's mostly women who would go into that shop to buy that stuff. So let's see how many women there are in that. And then you start filtering it down until you find the combination of lifestyle factors that fit with the kind of person that will be very likely to come into your shop. Now, how would you know that? Well, you'd know that from basically hanging around enough shops like that, that you see who the people are that come in and out, who are the people that seem to be buying, and you get a very strong indication. You may even be one of those people yourself. Chances are if you're getting into that business, you are one of those people. So you can say, you know what, they're people a bit like me. Here's the things I love. Let's look for people who are like that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of this and into the audience insights so you can actually see what it looks like. Let me just bring up the next screen. So this will look familiar as the Facebook Insights screenshot that I showed a little bit earlier. You can go to Facebook for Business, which is just facebook.com/business. Everyone can get in there. And it either lets you start creating an ad or going through the process of creating the ad. There's a lot of resources in there, such as learning tools from the Facebook Blueprint, which shows you how to use the Facebook and Instagram platforms more effectively as a business owner. You can ask questions to get answers to very direct questions. You can connect with others who are doing something within the community as business owners. You can read really great stories about other businesses doing things, how you can then share your message across the web, work together through Facebook Workplace, or you can just simply go to Insights Tools, and then I'm going to go up to Audience Insights. This will now open up an interface that says, okay, this is what Audience Insights are. Let's go and visit them. So it's going to open up because I've got an account, an ads account with Facebook. It opens up this rather uninspiring screen, but it does give us lots of information. So we can either start with people connected to your page. I'm going to go with everybody on Facebook. So I'm doing some pre-market research. So I haven't set up a website, or I haven't set up a shop yet, or I haven't set up my my business network, if that's what I'm trying to do. I just want to find out if there's some kind of affinity in there or some interest in what it is I'm looking to do. So if I go to everyone on Facebook, I want to start now narrowing down the information on the left that it's going to tell me. Now, this gives me an overall look. It defaults to the United States because everything is so American. So I can change that to Australia. And now I can remove the United States because I'm not really interested in their stuff. And it's telling me that any time through a month, between 15 and 20 million people are using the Facebook platform per month actively. So you go, okay, that's a fairly big chunk of people. I'm not necessarily selling to the whole of Australia right now. I just want to find out something about one particular town. So if I want to look at that and go, okay, this is, let's go through first, at least looking at what some of the affinities are and what some of the interests are for general Australian population on Facebook. Now, remembering, because you're not meant to be advertising to people under the age of 18 really on the Facebook platform, we like to stick with people of 18 years old and above. So it won't allow you to go any less than that. And you can pick a gender, like a gender that you want to narrow down on, or I'm just going to open it up to everyone. So between 18 and 65 plus. So pretty much everyone have an adult age, every gender, every interest, every page they might be connected to. I just want to see the general information about people on Facebook in Australia. We can see there's at any day or any month between 15 million and 20 million people there. You've got 54% of the people on Facebook are women, 47% are men, and you can see a clump in the middle. So the age group between 25 and 34 is actually the biggest age group. So that whole thing is saying that Facebook users are all old is kind of not that true. As you start to get to the 45 to 54, which is the area of Facebook that I'm actually in, that's actually not the first or even the second biggest area. It's actually on third, and it's consistently third or equal third when it comes to men. So you see there's a big clump there in the middle. So your 25-year-olds to 44-year-olds are definitely where the majority of activity on Facebook lives. We can see that 48% of people are married who are on Facebook, 27% single, another 20% who've just said they're in a relationship. And there's about 5% of the population on Facebook at the moment are engaged. That's a remarkable amount of people when you look at 15 million to 20 million people, and 5% of those people are engaged. So if there's, say, let's just say 20 million people on Facebook, 10% of that is 2 million, right? 5% is 1 million. 1 million engaged people who are about to get married currently on Facebook. There's a ton of people about to get married who need to be marketed to because they're about to get married by people who are selling services and products that would suit someone who's getting married. That's one of the first immediate insights I get from that. I was surprised to see that such a high number of people at this time are actually engaged to get married in Australia on Facebook. Now, if I want to break that down a bit further and say, let's see women who are engaged. So it's around about that 5%. If I look at men, you want to see that as about 5% as well. Yep, it is. Otherwise, yeah, you'd be seeing a bit of inequity there. Let's just say, sticking with women, we go that 51% of women on Facebook are married. So that tells you the majority, just a slim majority of women on Facebook are actually married. So a lot of the time when you're talking to people on Facebook in marketing and in ads, it could be a lot of the time talking to a married woman who has completed at least a bachelor course at university. Isn't that really interesting? So you realize you're talking to a lot of women who are both married and quite well educated. That kind of gives you an insight that you go, huh, that makes me want to change some of the language I'm talking about. So let's explore a little bit more and go beyond those demographics into the kind of things that really trend well with people in that age group. So we're looking at women of any age on Facebook in Australia, and we might want to then, narrow that down to just the married ones, the ones who had completed university. So we're narrowing it down again. You got between 1 and 1.5 million people now. We're going to go and see what the things are of, now remember we chose women of any age that are married, have completed university. We want to see the things that they have an affinity to. So Thermomix, they like Thermomixes. Quirky cooking. There's a strong affinity with Disney on Ice performances, because remember, these are women who are married. They'll likely have kids as well. You see baby goods and children's goods feature really strongly. Educational stuff on raising children. Thermomix comes up again and again. It's really scary, isn't it? $2,000 blender. And you can look at home decor, comes across as a strong area of interest as well. E-commerce, this is hard to find. I don't even know what that is, but you can look at that and see what it is. And you can see, yep, these are the areas that really have come up strong in this particular population. So remembering married women who have completed university. So you're seeing there's a lot of them. Almost half of that group are into this, whatever Hippo Blue is. I'm gonna have a look at it. Let's see what Hippo Blue actually is. You're probably, I'm sitting there going, I know what it is. I know what that is. I go there myself. Hippo Blue is baby goods and children's goods. So really interesting. A business that started up as an e-commerce thing has become this actual real thing when it comes to people on Facebook who like to share that kind of stuff. So really interesting to know that these insights lead to real businesses. And you can go, well, if I'm wanting to start up a kidswear brand, then this is a kidswear brand that's really strongly featuring in my target demographic. And I might want to emulate some of the things that Hippo Blue do. I can take that back and clear all that out again. So I can go back to my demographics, and I want to sort of get everybody in there. So I'm just going to, where's my clear? I'm going to go. Oh, and the other thing is too, if I want to save these things, I can save that particular audience and call that married, educated women. And that will save that will save an audience that I can then use my ads manager a little bit later on. So if I wanted to actually target those people later on in an ad campaign, I can do that. So now we've found all these different features about people, about the kind of things they like. We can also see the kind of things they work in. So community and social services is a big sector that's had a lot of growth recently in it. So that's interesting to know also if there's sectors that are growing within the target demographic you're looking for. Married women who are educated within Australia, we can see that they have had a very large increase in jobs moving into community and social services, into education as well, healthcare. All these areas have had big rises. What we've seen is those sales, though, has taken a decrease. We can go down a bit further. We can see things like transport, installation, repair, farming, protective services, even the arts have all taken a very big dive in the amount of women in that particular demographic that have either lost jobs or they've just moved out of those sectors. And of course, arts, entertainment, sports and media have been very heavily affected during COVID-19. So too with food and restaurants, and with things like cleaning and maintenance, where a lot of offices are closed down and are not using cleaning and maintenance services quite so much. So you can start to see some really interesting correlations of data that tell you that there's things are not quite what they used to be. Now, if I go there and I look at the location of that particular demographic, remembering women educated in Australia, I can then look at where they tend to be located and where the growth seems to be. There's been a growth of 100% of people in Wallsend in New South Wales and Australia, which I'm not wrong, is sort of like just above Newcastle, around the Newcastle region. Warrnambool has had an increase of people getting interested in Facebook. So what you can do start to say is there's a growth of people coming onto the platform in particular places. Bunbury, Port Macquarie, Toowoomba have all had quite decent increases in the amount of people coming into the platform, which means that they're fresh, they're curious, they're discovering stuff all the time, and they're very, very open to marketing messages like yours. Even Launceston, it's only about 88,000 people who live there, but they seem to have come online quite heavily, particularly in the last month. So something's happening in these places where they're going up and up and up. We're not seeing the big cities featuring here. Maybe Perth down the bottom there has a 2% increase. What we can also see is that places such as, they've gone backwards a bit. Cairns has become a lot less active. Townsville, a lot less active. Interesting, two cities quite fairly close to each other. Spring Hill, which is in Brisbane, and the Maribyrnong area of Melbourne has seemed to have dropped a lot of people down as well. So you can start to see that there's, where you can see strong economic activity tends to be correlated with strong increases in people coming onto social media platforms as well. We can then see also what they tend to do in this demographic. So we're looking at women who are educated in Australia. We can see that they average liking about 2 business pages over a lifetime. That's obviously set by a lot of people who don't like any. They tend to be commenters. They like posts. They don't redeem a lot of promotions. It's not something they really do much of, but they do click on a lot of ads. So when that's telling you that this demographic particularly, they're engaged shoppers and they are affected by things they see on Facebook in terms of ads. So if you do something which actually appeals to them, they're very likely to click on there, far more clicking on an ad than liking a page. So if you're having trouble getting your page likes up, you may want to try just doing an ad to reach them, to sell them something, rather than trying to get people to increase your likes on your page. The majority of people are using a mobile only within this range. So that's not surprising. You go to any cafe where there's a lineup for people, you see them lining up with a mobile phone in hand, checking Facebook or checking something, reading news, anything like that. Women in Australia who've been educated are also very big users of iPhones and iPods. So they'd be an iPhone. Far more than Android. That's really interesting. As you start to swing around to men, that becomes very, very different. The Android seems to come up quite a lot. But educated women in Australia like their iPhones. The majority of them are accessing it through their phone only, which is most likely an iPhone. So you know that, and you go, well, I'm selling accessories for iPhones. There's definitely a market in there for educated women to buy accessories for iPhones, for covers and for any sort of like anything that's going to really give them a better experience of using their iPhone, or perhaps looking at going, I've got an idea for an app that I want to put on iPhones. You might go, well, even though I'd want to have it on both Android and on iPhones, I'm far better off aiming initially for people on iPhones because we can see that they're heavy users of it. And secondly, they are iPhone users, not just users of mobile in general. If we want to break that down a little bit more, we can go, okay, let's go and create a new audience. So I'm not going to save that one. Again, everyone on Facebook. I'm going to narrow this down to a particular area. So if you can just pop in the Zoom webinar chat, roughly just the areas where you're from. So if you're listening in, please just put in the chat where you're from, and I'll just focus on those areas for now. So you're getting some interesting information coming out of your particular regions that you can have a look at. So Catherine's from Perth. So let's look at Perth then. So Perth, not that one, this one. I'm going to change it from the United States to Perth. So between the ages of anything up, what I'm going to do is make this interesting. I'm going to look in Perth for people who are over 35 and let's just say up to 55 years old. Now that's a very high purchase area for high-end consumer goods. 35 to 55, let's just say people in general. We're not going to break that down into men or women. And we can see in that demographic, that's where they all are. The majority are married, which is no surprise. The majority are also university educated. And some of the areas that they're growing for them is architecture and engineering, or engineering especially. It's a FIFO capital of Australia, really. Social sciences, life and physical, so PTs and that sort of thing are on the increase. Installation repairs, so sparkies, plumbers, any sort of handyman services are on the increase. And cleaning is now on the increase as well, which is very interesting, bucking the trend of the rest of Australia. Mostly because I guess Western Australia is a little less closed down than some other areas of the country, because you've been able to, like the Northern Territory, really contain COVID-19 very well. So then we look at what are the things that are very interesting those area. It's going to be very, very generic because we haven't broken it down to into agenda. So we look at the gender, we probably get very different responses between here, men and women. But if we look at this, it is 53% women, 47% men. So it's going to be skewed towards the things that women like a little bit more. Nathan, Nat, and Sean, I think it's a radio show on Nova. So that would be something like Nova, I think, is the highest rating breakfast show in Perth. So it tells you, okay, there's definitely an affinity with breakfast radio in Perth. The Mandoon Estate is very strong. The Urban Farmer Pick Your Own Strawberries. For craft brewing, cider features strongly. Getting fresh food delivered to you is very, very strong, and a very, very strong interest in there. And some of the groups like the Perth Mums Group is very, very strong. I've actually seen this on the Perth RBT and Booze Bus Locations Group to sort of dob in where the booze buses and where the random breath testing and speed cameras as well, they often mention in there too. So you can see that there's things that, like this Weekend Notes Perth has had a drastic increase of affinity to it. So it's grown out so much to 2,390 times the affinity it used to have. Perth Kids Wonderland. Now, a lot of this will be to do with the fact that during a pandemic, you couldn't travel outside of Perth. You couldn't leave your state because you weren't really sure whether you're going to be able to come back in again without 2 weeks of quarantine in a horrid hotel. So what you would do is find out what are the things that you can do in Perth. What are the things for kids in Perth? What are the things for kids to enjoy in Perth? Kids around Perth. You're seeing a strong feature there, that there was a lot of interesting things to do in Perth for people in Perth during this period. So really interesting information to get out there. We can see sort of roughly on the areas of Perth that they're all coming from and where the growth has come from. So we're seeing growth from Swan, we're seeing growth from Wanneroo City, Canning Vale, Freo, Morley, Dianella, Thornley have all had very strong increases in the audiences come in. So they've had, particularly in Perth overall, has come onto Facebook in quite big numbers. The increase in the amount of people active on Facebook has increased during COVID-19. We look at what they are into. Again, strong ad clickers, but not people who like pages necessarily. Now, Catherine, that's an example I got from you in Perth. I'd like to now break this down a bit more. If you can tell me in the Zoom webinar chat what your business is and what it does. And that'll give me an idea that we can do a little bit of market research into the interest level of people who are in your market and who may have an interest in what you do. And Samantha, I'll get you to do the same. If you can put your mention in there, what it is you do, and we'll have yours as well. So we can take a look at doing a bit of market research from there. So first, Catherine is in family law. People who are separated with disputes about kids or money. That's really great. Okay, Catherine, I'm going to then break this down. So I'm just going to make a few assumptions that family law is not really going to affect someone until they're at least sort of in their late 20s. So I'm going to say 28 through to about 55. You start to get an idea of what's going on. Now, what I'll do is look at the relationship status. So the relationship status is going to be they're currently married. They're definitely not newlywed. We look at people that are currently married, and we can start to look at what things they're actually interested in. Now, in your case, they're looking at being not married. So that would be something like they might be showing a very strong interest in divorce, and things they're looking at are very strong towards divorce. So we say that there is currently between 10 and 15,000 people in the Perth region between 28 and 55 years old who have an active interest in the past month in divorce as a topic. That's pretty strong. Like, that's telling you there's a whole lot of people in a whole lot of pain right now who are probably looking for what you do. Now, you're actually able to take this and target it. If you even want to look at the locations around Perth where this is strongest, you're going to look in places like in Perth in general, there's quite a strong advanced interest in Freo. Up in the north in Wanneroo, you've got the same kind of thing as well. You're starting to see quite strong increases in that topic over the last month in the topic of divorce. So you know that there's definitely a market for what you do. What you want to be able to do is save that audience and call that intending divorce in Perth. Oh, my spelling's terrible. Intending divorce in Perth. And I can then use that audience as a target when I create my next ads campaign. So, or at least tells you and confirms with you there's something going on. There's a lot of talk of divorce. 10 to 15,000 people in a market is a lot of people, specifically when we looked at this from a point of view of saying it's only in that age range. Now, if I want to narrow that down even further, let's just make it women. So we're seeing that out of all people, there's actually more men who are interested in the divorce thing than, more women who are talking about divorce than men. Probably no surprise to you there. If I just look at those women, then I see that the vast majority of them are sitting within 35 to 54 years old. So we're kind of really right now, 28 to 55. If I split that out to everybody, we'll find that that doesn't change much. It's really between that 35 and 54-year-old age group, with a surprising amount of people between 25 and 34 also considering divorce. Overwhelmingly university educated as well, working in fast-growing fields like community and social services, healthcare, education, management, arts. We can see the things that they're into, so we can sort of make references to it. They're largely going to be mums. There's a lot of mums kind of stuff in there, finding things for kids to do. The areas of Perth that we can find that there's been a huge increase. Look at this. In Swan is actually got a higher percentage of people who are in that affinity group than in many of the other areas. And then we can see that these are also people who are a little heavier page likers, but look at this. These are people who are very actively clicking on ads right now. So it'd be a very good idea for you to look at ads and look at how our change has gone with the use of iPhones and Android. It's actually not that big a difference between iPhone and Android users. I don't know what that means for for someone who's working in family law, but it's something to bear in mind that if you're trying to do something appealing to people just who are iPhone users, you would miss out on quite a lot of people there. So really interesting stuff you can drag out of there, and then you can take little bits of these pieces. You can break down over here in the interest where I've just chosen divorce. I can, take that even further and look at family relationships, look at they're interested in family, they're interested in weddings maybe, and you can start to get even more interest in people. You see that the ads click sort of drops down a bit. We start to get a bigger hump towards the middle at 35 to 44. We're starting to see people who have an affinity with divorce, but are also into family and weddings, who are educated women in Perth, who are married right now. And we start to see some really interesting trends about them. So it's fascinating information in there. Actually, you just said that, Catherine, fascinating information to find out who you go. So I'm going to look at Samantha, who's in Bunbury. So I'm going to create a new one. I'm not going to save that previous one. And we're going to go to Bunbury in Western Australia. It's going to change it out of there. So we see that there's between 30 and 35,000 people in Bunbury that are currently on the Facebook platform. So with that, we see that they are quite a strong majority are women. That's really interesting to know. So that anything that you're sort of marketing to does lean very heavily towards women. Slightly less amount of people are married in Bunbury than what we see in other places, and slightly less university educated with a higher degree of high school only educated people. So interesting that you're not necessarily talking to as many super highly educated people, but you are still talking to people that are largely going to be, likely to be in a relationship or married, likely to have done university at some stage as well. And they're going to have a certain set of interests. Now, if you're doing gyms and recreation, I'm just going to go gym as an interest. So gym memes, pure gym, gym jumpies, gym flow, gymnastics, maybe, I wouldn't say world gym, maybe we say exercise. not spelling it right. Exercise, R-C-I-S-E. Physical exercise. It changes that a little bit more. Again, it's stretching out even more into women. We go then say maybe something like Les Mills, which is body attack and body pump and all that sort of stuff. So there's an interest in that. Again, it's strongly within women. If we say it's something like CrossFit, again, maintains that strong affinity with women. Now we go people who are most likely to be able to afford to go to a gym that is not sort of like your local YMCA. We can go, maybe they are somebody who's 25 to 45. We'll just narrow that down. And we say, look, we're showing there's clearly a majority of these people are women. So let's go, let's advertise to women again. So we can see that they are mostly married or at least in relationships, mostly university educated. In fact, quite a decent majority are university educated. We can see that other things they like, and this is where you're going to find out. So the PCYC, I mentioned the YMCA before, so very, very similar organization. So you can say the PCYC probably has a gym. So that's something you can look at and go, that's something that I can find what they do. What do they do that people seem to have an affinity with? They don't seem to have a huge amount of activity on there, but they do have quite a lot of followers. In a smaller town, that's quite a lot of people who follow them. So you can say, there's something they're doing that gets people at least interested in them. They also like dessert. No surprise there. And then they work it all off again. Boogie bounce, that's really interesting. I don't even know what that is. Let's have a look. So boogie bounce is, there you go. So that has a very strong affinity in your local area as well. And they're in Ballarat. They're not even in your location, but there's a strong interest that people have in this. So that's really worthwhile you knowing. That may be something you didn't even know before. You can go, yes, look, desserts are coming up again. Potato nose so sweet, little taste of 7, coffee shops, burgers. We're starting to see that there's a strong affinity between people who love food that's not necessarily good for them, and health and exercise, CrossFit, Les Mills, who are women between 25 and 45 in the Bunbury region of Western Australia. How very interesting. So you can see, what the affinity levels are. The PCYC is really strong in that area. 980 people in your target audience have some kind of like or have had some kind of interaction with the PCYC. So you can see what you're up against. And then we can see what areas they live in. It's just going to show Bunbury, but it's also showing people who are involved, a slight amount of people that are coming in from Perth as well. And that's a bit of a trek down to Bunbury from Perth though. And then activity-wise, again, very strong ad clickers. That bodes very well for you if you're trying to set up a new business and trying to get a message out to people. They have very strong mobile users, very strong iPhone users as well. So it may be worth you having some sort of check-in process or a class schedule that's delivered that's very easily readable on an app or on a phone in general through a mobile website. Just something that's going to make it so that people can see exactly what it is you're doing and how they're consuming that kind of material that you are producing. So again, really fascinating look inside what your demographic is. But what you are seeing is that overall, there's between 6,000 and 7,000 people in your market have an interest in this very thing at the moment. So there is definitely a market in there. In a market of 30 to 35,000, to get 6,000 or 7,000 people who have an interest in what you're doing. I don't know how competitive it is in Bunbury. It could be pretty competitive. You've probably got all the local gyms plus the chains as well, and the Anytimes and the Snaps and the Jets and whatever the local chains are in Western Australia as well, all competing for that dollar. So that's something which you look at and go, there is definitely a hunger for what you do. It's just a matter of finding out who's doing it really well right now, emulating the things that are really good that connect, and just not doing the things that don't particularly connect that well. So we're taking a really, really deep dive into the kind of things that people are interested in what you do. I'd love to get another example actually to go through. So if anyone else wants to throw up an example of what they want to do for their business and where they are, that'd be great as well. Otherwise, I can throw in one more example, which is kind of a bit of a random one to see whether there's something that sort of hits the mark there. But yeah, feel free if you would like to have a go and have a look at what the interest levels are in your markets. Even if your market isn't a local market, you want to market the whole of Australia, or you want to market to other countries, That's even something you can do in here. In fact, that's something I might do is, let's just say you want to see if you can export some stuff into another country. So don't save on that. We're going to put a country and let's make it New Zealand. So in New Zealand, take out the United States. We don't want that. The whole amount of people in New Zealand is about 3 to 3.5 million people on Facebook. So in there, we see that it is a skew towards women, as most of Facebook is. We see that it is skewed towards married and in relationships, skewed towards university level of education. And we can see that overall in New Zealand, we see that there's people, look at that straight away, jobs. You tell we're in a bit of a downturn right now. New Zealand's not immune to that. So you can see that that's a very, very strong affinity with them. But then we can say, let's break it down to people of 30 to 40. Let's make it men. And the interests become like Heineken, beer, meat, power tools. You hate to think of things like in people who are like stereotypes, but look how drastically that changed when I took it from all, which is very much in that range of, that's the baby ages. And then we go to just men, it completely changes. Hunting, fishing and adventures, alcohol, more alcohol, boxing, all these things that are very strongly geared towards men seem to be appealing to men within that age group as well. But if we were to say, well, let's just say men who have an interest in LGBT, people, no, not connected to interests, thanks. LGBT, so the LGBT community, that's going to change a little bit. All of a sudden, Heineken drops down a bit. The boxing's disappeared, but we've got supplements, bodybuilding has become a very strong area for them. So if you want to sell supplements into New Zealand, you got a chance there. That's actually strong affinity with that. Things like ending HIV. So that's a very stereotypical thing for the gay community. Clothing brands that are very strongly affiliated. So you go, oh, if they're really into Hollenstein Brothers, then we can look at, okay, if I'm doing men's clothing, what is it that they're doing that really seems to get some kind of interest with men who are in the gay community? So we go, okay, these are the kind of clothes that they sell. These are the kind of models they're using. You can get some inspiration on what you may do to reach that same audience that they seem to be reaching as well. I've got another answer here from Amanda, who's in Perth, a premium virtual assistant, and want to target micro businesses probably owned by women. Yep, that's a pretty tight target. I reckon we can find that too. So the first thing we're going to do is they're probably going to be in Australia. You're based in Perth, but being a virtual assistant, you can work with people from anywhere. So we're just going to go Australia to begin with. We're going to look at if they're owning a business, they're not likely to be 18. They're more likely to people who are sort of that 30 up. So I'm going to go 30 to, let's just say 50 women. And then what I'm going to type in interest is small business. And notice how something comes out as small business owner. That's what you want. That is one of the best little targets you'll be able to find across Australia's small business owners in that age group who are women. So let's look at the demographics of that. There's not quite enough data in there to make it meaningful. So we can break that out a little bit further and just say, let's just take the age out and to get a few more people in that group. And look at all rather than just women, still a little bit less. So if we say there are people who are also interested in work from home, and we're going to add a few more interests such as small business. Then we start to get some answers. They've got enough there to work on. So we start to see that people who have that interest across work from home, small business, we can say maybe sole trader might be another area of interest. No, that one's not coming up. But there's a lot of things that are sort of complementary to those descriptions. We see that they tend to be in the younger area. Look at that. How interesting is that? You would have assumed that it was going to be more in that 45 to 54, but if anything, It's more down towards the younger demographics that are looking to do this. And not surprising, I've got a 20-year-old housemate who the last thing he wants to do is go into a workplace and work for someone in a workplace. He just doesn't see the point. He said, why? I want to work from home. I want to have bare feet and I want to work on my undies. Why should I have to go and work in a workplace? I can do the same thing and do it from home on my own time, my own way, and do it remotely and earn just as much money. So he's just like, well, I don't want to go and work in an office. So he's in that demographic. He's 20, in the much younger demographic, but you see, look at 25 to 34, people who are just not wanting to do that. So that would make you look at your marketing whole different way. When the assumption might have been that 35 up, you've got a strong amount in that 25 to 34 as well. Even though they are majority married, there's still a lot of singles in there and people who are in not married relationships. Mostly university educated, which is, I guess, coming up for a lot of people in Australia. Let's just break that down to women. That university education stays stable, but the married amount goes up quite dramatically. So you're up to 58% are married. So the kind of things you're going to target towards in the creative stuff that you're producing is going to be very much around stuff that's going to appeal to that kind of woman who's married, university educated, and in the demographic that you choose. Now, the smart way to do it would be to produce an ad that's targeted to younger women, and then one that's advertised to middle-aged women, and then those coming into the upper middle-aged area as well. We can see the areas they currently work in with those interests, but what I like to look at is the page likes. What are the things they're already into? So they're following strong women like Cherie Barber and Elisa and Lysandra. They're following very niche clothing brands. Home decor is very strong for them. So you know that if they're into home decor, they're going to like a specific kind of aesthetic when it comes to those things. I call it the Canva aesthetic. A lot of the templates are designed around this particular demographic. Things like Coco Republic, Matte Blatt Furniture, the Body Shop, they have very similar aesthetics around them that have a very specific way of presenting themselves. So you can take this information and go, well, if they like Cherie Barber, who is Cherie Barber? She's a strong businesswoman who works on renovating for profit, and she's a bit of a consultant for this. So we go, okay, these are the kind of things they like. They will also be interested in, starting up their own businesses. They're going to be interested in flipping homes, all that kind of thing. And then we look even further. We go, they like Coco Republic. So they like the kind of furniture that looks like this. Look at that. So stylish, but quite minimalist. So that is going to inform some of the style you may have in the ads and in the posts that you're going to do as well. And then we can start looking at locations in Australia that seem to be very strong in this. So you start to see in Melbourne and in Sydney, it's very strong, obviously, because they're very big population centres. But we're seeing that Bunbury's got a mention. Launceston has got a mention, Port Macquarie. So some smaller areas you can start to see. These are the areas I might want to do. So Selena, are these insights database compiled upon all the information on the Facebook profiles? Great question. Yes and no. It's not just what the information is on their profiles. It's also based upon behavior. In fact, it's much more heavily geared towards the behavior of people, what they're looking for, searching for, clicking on, liking, interacting with on the platforms, as well as on Instagram, not just Facebook, not just what they say is in their profile. So it's not saying that they are necessarily a small business owner. It shows a behavior of a small business owner, because there's things we do as small business owners on these platforms, which are kind of telltale signs that we probably own small businesses. And interest in small business would be that you're not just shopping for small businesses, but if you're also showing an affinity of working from home and an affinity towards small business ownership, you're probably going to be a small business owner, or at least coming into a time where you're going to be a small business owner. So yes, it is based upon things they answer obviously on their profiles, but the majority of this information is actually coming from people's behavior on the platforms, not just what they say they're doing, but what they are actually doing on the platforms. So it's a lot more complicated than just the yes and no answers on their profiles of what they say they're doing. It's more about what they're actually doing on the platform. So we're coming to the end of this session, which is great because we managed to cover off quite a few different kinds of businesses. Now, this has been recorded and will be going on to Business Station's YouTube account and my own one as well for Dante St. James, and to Business Station. If you search those on YouTube in the next few days, they will be available. I'll probably be uploading this one to my YouTube channel in the next sort of half an hour. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions at all, I'm just going to type my email address into the chat window there. And if you've got any questions you'd like to ask or any for follow-up stuff that you didn't really want to ask out in the open, please email me. I'll be happy to send you back some examples. So just a quick overview to get in there. If you go to facebook.com/business, I'll take out the learn, don't need the learn. And then you go to insights, insights tools, and then audience insights. That's what takes you into the audience insights. You can go in there and start exploring a world of data like you've probably never searched for before. It certainly opens up so much information for you. And with well over 75% of Australia now active on Facebook and Instagram, you definitely know you're getting information based on a very large sample of people within our country. So thank you again for taking part. And also thank you for taking time out of your busy days and busy businesses to actually learn a bit more and work, not just in your businesses, but on your businesses as well. Have a great week, and I'll hopefully see you again soon.